Alright guys, so as you probably already have seen, Sony Santa Monica just announced the newest God of War title, God of War Laufey, featuring Kratos' wife, Faye as we have come to know her from the Norse games. Now, based on the reaction you've probably all seen online since this announcement, it has been quite controversial since many have taken issue with the God of War not being a playable character in a God of War game. And as you can tell from the title, I am also one of those people that really don't like the idea of playing as Faye. But more than that, I don't really think the premise works as a whole, nor do I think that what was shown really encapsulates what a God of War game is supposed to be, and this video will just simply be me airing out my concerns and frustrations with the prospect of this new entry. Now, of course, as a longtime fan, I have an issue with not playing as Kratos, just like most people do. People online, though, keep harping on the idea that wanting to play as Kratos is somehow just because we don't want to play as a woman, but I honestly just find this idea to be fucking retarded. This shit isn't rocket science, and it shouldn't be a surprise that fans of a long-standing franchise want to play as the main character of said franchise. I would have the exact same issues if they ended up making Atreus the main character as I do with Faye. And I honestly can't understand why that's controversial because this is the same with most popular franchises. If I'm playing Halo, I want Master Chief. If I'm playing Gears, I want Marcus Phoenix. If I'm playing Uncharted, I want Nathan Drake. The list goes on, and it's no surprise that a game like Halo 5 or Gears 4, where the main character was swapped, are some of the least well received games in those franchises. But no one seemed to have an issue with those complaints then. And as I said before, God of War is one of my favorite franchises of all time. I think God of War 3 and God of War 2018 are two of the best games ever made. But that being said, I think Ragnarok was a massive step down, especially in terms of writing, kind of devolving from hard-hitting and visceral storytelling to a sort of Disneyfication of the product. And from what I've seen from the showcase at the State of Play, these issues seem to be continuing on in that direction. Right off the bat, I think the fact that knowing Faye is in some other dimension really reduces the hard-hitting emotions and feelings that came with God of War 2018, and it kind of just reduced the payoff for Kratos and Atreus as a whole. The entire point of the game is that Faye had passed on, and Kratos and Atreus are on a path of laying her to rest in a way that they had promised by scattering her ashes in Jotunheim. But knowing that since that moment that they cremated her, she's actually just been suffering and fighting in a completely different dimension kind of shatters that feeling of relief once you beat the game, because she isn't at rest, she's actually off fighting other gods from different pantheons and stressing the fuck out during the entire timeline of 2018 and Ragnarok. So in a way, for me at least, this game's very existence actually damages the writing of 2018, especially if this was the plan all along. I honestly think that Faye being more of a mystery and having us players knowing very little about her in 2018 and Ragnarok, outside of certain mentions and dialogue, was really beautiful. Because even though we didn't know about her or who she was, you could still feel the immense impact she had on both Kratos and Atreus, which is just proof of how great the writing was, especially in 2018. But now that we know what she's been doing the whole time, the whole allure of her is kind of just gone, and I think that's just a shame. Then there's the massive issue of the gelatinous Jack Quaid cube and the talking sword. To me, not only is this just fucking goofy and out of place, but it's evidence that Sony first-party studios are devolving and seem to have a lot of trouble actually branching out and trying new things. Each new entry in every beloved franchise just seems to be trying nothing new and all just blurring together to the point where I'm not even interested anymore. Just because Mimir as a sidekick was so popular in the other Norse games doesn't mean you have to regurgitate and reskin the same ideas every entry. And like I said before, the Disneyfication of the dialogue is just overly corny and out of place in a series like God of War. It just kind of seems that with these games, and I'm talking about Sony first-party games, is that they get more and more cinematic and less video gamey with each passing entry. And I'm not really one of those guys to bitch about so-called movie games, but the fact that they showed you 20 uninterrupted minutes of God of War Laufey, and maybe like 5 was actual gameplay, tells you that gameplay is secondary when it comes to making these games. Instead of focusing on gameplay, writing, and dialogue, the money is being spent on mocap visuals and expensive actors to voice and model the characters. And as a huge fan of the original God of War games, it just feels like the vibe and the feel that made the franchise what it is being lost in favor of Hollywood-style cinematic experiences. Which is annoying because those older games, like especially the God of War games, were very cinematic in quality, but they still were able to have great gameplay, great writing, and great visuals. Nothing was sacrificed when making these games, and I don't know if it's just like a lost art or what's going on, but it seems that these studios have forgotten how to do that. But yeah, honestly, I think that's probably it for the writing, and just because we haven't seen the full game, I'm obviously not going to give my final verdict on the writing since we've seen so little of it. It might turn out to be a lot better than what I'm making it out to be, but that is yet to be seen. But for now, I just want to focus on the stuff that I didn't like in terms of gameplay because I really didn't think it was anything special. And quite honestly, it left a lot to be desired, which is something I don't really say a lot when it comes to Santa Monica games. But yeah, that just seems to be the case here. Now, obviously, I'm just going to start with the combat because the combat just looks like more of the same that we've seen from Ragnarok and 2018. And to be honest, I've never really been a huge fan of that combat. You know, there are sections where it's fun and it feels good, but for the most part, I feel like it's pretty unintuitive and relatively straightforward and not really as fun as the older games. But to say it's not as fun is not insult because those games are masterpieces, so living up to that is not an easy feat. I still had fun with the combat in 2018 and in Ragnarok. I just wouldn't say I'm the biggest fan. Like, it's not my favorite combat. And I just feel like with Laufey, they just showed you more of the same, and it doesn't really move the needle for me like that much at all. I get that they added the jumping mechanic where you could fight in midair. That's pretty cool. But I don't know, it just doesn't really do it for me. It doesn't give me that extra like wow factor that makes me really want to play this game because I've already done it in Ragnarok and 2018. And I also just wanted to point out another thing I noticed in the game, especially during the boss battle that they showed off, is that her attacks don't really seem to be very, crunchy. It doesn't seem to do a lot of damage. The enemy's not reacting to her hits unless it's like one of those scripted like slash kind of cutscene moments. Like when she's just hitting him, he's just not reacting at all. And I don't really love that. I feel like it makes the game feel kind of arcadey to a degree. And then you have Jack Quaid's gelatinous cube like throwing hits at random times, but it kind of doesn't even look real. It kind of looks like it's a cutscene. I don't know, it just felt really awkward. It feels like you're not actually in total control of the character when you're in these boss fights. So I don't really know how I feel about that mechanic. Like, does the cube just attack whenever it wants? Do you have a prompt or you tell the cube to attack? I don't know. From what I've seen, it just kind of looked like something you're not in control of, and I don't like that mechanic much at all. I feel like it takes away from the freedom of the player. And yeah, it's just not something that seems to be, intuitive for a game or a franchise like God of War. It just kind of looks so goofy that it's taking me out of the immersion, and I'm wondering like what the fuck is going on here? Where is this entity from? Why is it in a God of War game? I don't know. You guys tell me in the comments. Now, another thing I wanted to comment on is phase design. And, because this is like such a huge topic, people are saying, oh, you don't want to play as a woman, or they need to have big tits and a fat ass for these people to play as a woman. I really don't think that's the case at all because me personally, I don't care about that stuff. I just don't think her design is appealing in any way. And I'm not saying that in terms of like physical attraction. I'm saying that just in terms of like the cool factor. Like, she just looks bleh to me. She just looks like, Wonder Bread. Like, there's nothing cool about her. Yeah, they're showing that she's strong, but I feel like people keep saying, oh, didn't you know Faye's super strong? That was never the issue. The authors are going to do whatever they want with the character. Her being strong doesn't affect the way the character looks or the way people relate to or, enjoy a certain character. She could have been weak and you might still think she's a great character. Just because she's strong doesn't make her a good character. And her design in this game is just a detriment in my opinion. Now, what we know from the other God of War games is there is customization. So I would have to assume that there is going to be some sort of customization in this game, although they don't have the dwarves as like the people who, smith your weapons and smith your armor. So I don't know how that's going to work. But I gotta say, if they just have you walking around in like a tattered fucking, robe the entire game, it's going to be awful. It's just not fun to look at. They need to have some sort of customization. And if they don't, it's not going to work. But just to end off, I kind of want to end off on a positive note. And I will say that the whole concept of there being like this afterlife for the gods called the Everyone, I think that's very interesting. I think there's a lot of opportunities for really cool interactions, really cool storytelling, exploring different mythologies and stuff like that, which is awesome. There's definitely, potential there. I just wish it was including Kratos. That just is what it comes down to for me. I just feel like exploring Faye as a character is not all that interesting, especially because I had already thought that her being more mysterious was better for the franchise and better for the story in general. But, it remains to be seen. The game may end up being really good. I'm obviously going to play it when it comes out, so we'll see. But as of right now, from what I've seen, it just doesn't leave a lot to be desired and doesn't have me really looking forward to it. And overall, I just don't think it'll work based on the direction they've chosen to go with this game. Anyways, guys, I hope you enjoyed the video. I want you guys to let me know what you think down below in the comments. Please like and subscribe. Peace.